Episode 4. Betrayal, exile, and the fall of a legend victory had painted Hannibal's name into eternity. But even the greatest generals cannot escape the cruelty of time, politics, and betrayal. After Cannae, all of Rome trembled, yet it did not surrender. And here begins the tragedy of Hannibal, not in his failures of war, but in the failures of those who should have stood beside him. Imagine Italy in those years after Cannae. Towns defecting to Hannibal, southern cities throwing open their gates, Macedon offering alliances. Rome bled daily, retreating behind walls, afraid to face Hannibal in open battle. But in Carthage, his homeland, jealousy and division ruled. His enemies in the Senate feared his growing fame, his victories, his independence. They starved him of reinforcements, withholding the fresh troops and siege engines he needed to strike at the very heart of Rome. Hannibal's dream was always Rome itself. To break through its walls, to make the city kneel, to erase the fear his people had carried for generations. But year after year, supplies never came, and his army, though unbroken, slowly withered. Hannibal became like a lion surrounded by prey he could wound, but not kill. For 16 years he prowled Italy, 16 years of battles, ambushes, and skirmishes. He lived not in triumph, but in endurance. His soldiers married Italians, built families, grew old under foreign skies. Yet still Hannibal marched, refusing to leave, refusing to abandon the oath he had sworn to his father as a boy. And then Rome adapted. They avoided open battle, knowing Hannibal thrived on it. Instead, they fought a war of attrition. They cut off allies, burned supplies, harassed his lines. Slowly, relentlessly, the tide turned. Rome's legions struck back in Spain, choking Carthage's empire, cutting its wealth. By the time Scipio Africanus, Rome's rising star, sailed for Africa, Hannibal was forced to leave Italy, the land he had bled to conquer but never claimed. When Hannibal returned to Africa, the people greeted him as a savior, yet he knew the truth. Carthage was weak, corrupt, and unprepared. At Zama in 202 BCE, he faced Scipio in a duel of genius. For the first time, Hannibal's tricks faltered. Scipio had studied his methods, learned his mind, and Rome's cavalry, once shattered at Cannae, now turned the tide. Hannibal's elephants panicked, his men were overwhelmed, and for the first time in his life, defeat was undeniable. Carthage sued for peace, Rome was triumphant. But Hannibal's story did not end there. Stripped of armies, he turned to politics, reforming Carthage's corrupt systems, rebuilding its wealth. Yet Rome feared even a powerless Hannibal. They demanded his exile. And so the man who had once nearly brought Rome to its knees became a wanderer. He traveled from court to court, Syria, Bithynia, the eastern kingdoms, offering his wisdom, his strategies, his mind. Kings welcomed him, but none gave him the power to unleash another storm. The lion was caged but never tamed. Rome hunted him even in exile, demanding his surrender, pursuing him across the world. And in the end, Hannibal chose his fate. In 183 BCE, cornered in Bithynia, he took poison rather than fall into Roman hands. His final words were said to be bitter yet proud. "Let us relieve the Romans of their long anxiety, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for the death of a hated old man." He died far from Carthage, far from Italy, far from the city he had sworn to destroy. Yet his shadow never left Rome. Generals for centuries would whisper his name, armies would study his battles, and his brilliance would live on long after his ashes were scattered. Hannibal Barca was more than a general. He was the embodiment of defiance, of courage that dared the impossible, of genius that bent the laws of war. He had lost in the end, but his story, of the boy who swore eternal hatred for Rome, who led elephants across the Alps, who annihilated legions at Cannae, was immortal. If you find this video adding value to your life in any way, please take a moment and subscribe and like. And if you want to go further, write one word: value, because it helps with the algorithm so other people who need it can find it. It is free and a way to give back to me. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you.